lesson 18. Vishuddha Chakra. Vishuddhi comes from the word Shodhana, which means to purify. The chakra is inherently sattvic. The first, try to picture the 7 chakras. The physical body constitutes the lowest 5 chakras. Vishuddha chakra is the highest of those 5. Above that you have the mental body, and then you have the spiritual body or the causal body. So in the universe, the first vibration is sound. Remember when I explained Om in the beginning of the course? There is this famous phrase in the chapter of John in the Bible that starts with, first there was the Word. That is description of how the universe came into being. Very mysterious sentence that not many people understand. But the origin of everything, according to that philosophy, is that that origin is Om, or a vibration. The second vibration is the causal world, which is in the body, that is the crown chakra. In the universe, that is the consciousness of the universe. Consciousness of the universe is responsible for the order in the universe, the balance. Otherwise there would be chaos. We talked about this before when we talked about the concept of God. There is a very strict order in the universe that is just not possible to be there if there was not some kind of intelligence behind it. So that is the causal world in the universe. In the human being, the causal world is the crown chakra, where there is the possibility of the awakening of consciousness, provided that the right conditions are met. In our case, that's of course sattva. And the third vibration in the universe is air. And so you have this condensation again, starting from vibration, consciousness, and then air, which is the element of the heart chakra. Vishuddha chakra, all the chakras in the symbolical picture have a number of petals. The lowest chakra have the least petals. There are 2 petals in Muladhara chakra, 4 in Svadhisthana chakra, and 6 in Manipura, etc. The throat chakra, Vishuddha is around the throat area, has 16 petals, 16 or 18, 16, of which the character is all vowels, while the chakras below, all the characters in the petals are consonants. Consonants are inherently unsattvic, unharmonious, while vowels in Vishuddha chakra are they carry the sound. They are inherently sattvic. Hence the name Vishuddha, or the chakra of purity. All people, no matter how much yoga we practice, have a conflict in this chakra, because one of the functions of this chakra is expression. Now, human beings express themselves for a large part verbally, and no matter how eloquent you are, there is always a conflict there, because there are so many feelings, emotions, thoughts that are complex, that are very subtle, that are sometimes very vague, that it's impossible to express ourselves perfectly. So even if you are very eloquent, you will still have some form of disharmony here. That shows in the fact that almost everybody likes the color blue, which is the color associated with this chakra. Color blue that you can see in the air purifier there, the color blue that you can see in the image of our brand, Magic Pond Yoga. Color blue, I have several coats now because I have the luxury to buy some more coats than before, and because I spend a lot of time with the dogs outside, I have various. Before I always had only one winter coat. And the past 2 winter coats, one which lasted 12 years and the other one so far has lasted 10 years, I still have it. But they're all blue. Newer coats, I'm deviating from that deliberately, but the color blue I chose very deliberately because I'm a Dutch guy in Korea teaching in English. I have a huge conflict in this chakra and therefore feel a strong attraction to that color blue. Why? Because that color offers some level of harmonization on the level where you feel disturbed. I'll tell you how I found that coat. Yogis become very eccentric. Yogis become very picky. When you need something, you know exactly what you want. And if you can't find it, you will simply wait. So I do that with everything. When I needed a new coat, because the other one after 12 years was completely worn out, for me it was still functioning, but people told me, well, isn't it time to buy another coat? So I went to Yongsan iPark Mall, huge shopping mall, and I started looking for a winter coat. So I went to all the shops, and after 2 hours or so, I still hadn't found what I was looking for. And I was about to go down the escalator to go home with nothing. And then in the farthest corner of the shop, this color blue caught my eye. And I thought, okay, have to check it out. And I went there and I took it off the rack and I immediately knew that it was for me. So I had seen tens of coats. And you can just buy it, it's warm and it's functional. It just didn't feel right. So you become very picky. Don't go shopping with me because you will become impatient. And I ended up, of course, bringing that coat home. And still have it. It's like the other one, it's worn out. Time to buy something new. Because I spend a lot of time outside now because of the dogs, I really needed some quality shoes and clothes, so I just indulged a little bit. But before I had always one pair of outdoor shoes and one coat, and that's it. You see me always appearing. People who know me from 2 years and everything before that, they would always have seen me in my blue coat during the cold days of the winter. Very important. Color really affects your well-being or your sattva. And the fact that practically everyone has inevitably harmony issue on the level of the throat chakra, almost everybody likes the color blue, one way or another. As I said already, the function of the center is expression, but that is not only limited to speech. There's also body language. There are all forms of expression that are more subtle than mere verbal expression. So it's all related to Vishuddha chakra, Vishuddha or Vishuddhi, you can say both. Artists who create and express their artist tendencies by creating art, they function on the throat chakra, and it also kind of explains why artists have a natural tendency towards spirituality. Real artists, we talked about real artists before, because of the inherent instability they experience in terms of relationships, in terms of addictions and what have you. Real artists have a natural tendency towards spirituality because they have lots of energy in the throat chakra, as it is the center of expression. The significance of the throat chakra is such that it is the porthole, or it is the entrance from the physical body to the intellect and the spiritual body. So when you practice yoga, you breach the diaphragm, so away from the lower emotions and desires. You open the heart and the throat, and the rest is a matter of consequence. The awakening of consciousness occurs by reaching the throat chakra, and with that opening the road towards the highest chakras. So like the crown chakra is related to the heart, or the heart is kind of a representative of the heart chakra, the throat chakra is the entrance towards the higher levels of consciousness. That's all technical, maybe in a practical sense not so very valuable, but that is how it works, and that is why the throat chakra is rather different from the lower chakras, with different characters in its petals, which is of course symbolical, but with a meaning, and also the fact that it's inherently sattvic, while the lower chakras are inherently unsattvic. The chakra is known as the fountain of eternal youth, which is responsible for the ancient stories about people reaching ages of hundreds of years old. I don't know if you have read the Bible, but there are stories of people being 700, 800, 900 years old. And the most famous among them are, of course, Abraham and Sarah, who even had a child while they were already 800 years old or so. Theoretically, it means that eternal life is possible, but practically there are no examples or known examples other than the stories from ancient books of people that become older than 100. 120 is about the maximum that people reach. But theoretically, if the energy remains 100% sattvic, life would persist, life would not end. Hence the chakra is known as the fountain of eternal youth. In a practical sense, you can see it like this. People who practice yoga and are relatively sattvic are also healthier and more energetic, while other people's health and energy declines with age, you will be comparatively more healthy and energetic. So in a practical sense, the fountain of eternal youth translates into enduring health and energy levels at a higher age. The subtle element of this chakra is ether or sound. Ether is the substance that carries sound. So throughout the years, for me the term ether is very natural, because in the Netherlands, if you listen to the radio, the DJ will frequently tell you that he is coming to you not through the airwaves like an English language DJ would tell you. He will say he comes to you through the airwaves. Dutch DJs say, I'm coming to you through the ether. So Dutch people are very familiar with the term ether. For English American people, less. But ether is thinner than air. So the electric signal that you give with your phone or with a radio is being received at a distance, can be hundreds, sometimes even thousands of kilometers. How does it get there? It is being received through an antenna. Here it is being emitted, and somewhere in another location it's being received. So the way that the vibration of that signal travels, that is what we call through the ether. So it's thinner than air. That is the subtle element of this chakra. The vehicle of action is speech. The subtle organ of perception is hearing. Hearing is related to the throat, also physically connected with the throat. The subtle energy of this chakra is called Vijnana prana, which we also know as the energy that we perceive as ghost. The color blue, I mentioned. Now, Vijnana prana ghosts are vibrations of people's energy that remains behind. So modern people with a highly developed intellect and educated people, rational thinking people, they don't believe so much in ghosts anymore. But our tradition, our past is full of ghost stories. Ancient people, older generations, even older generation that's still alive, were very susceptible to energies, to the subtle phenomena of life and of nature. But they didn't have the intellect to rationalize it. A ghost is what we call a restless soul that has stayed behind. So Ajita explained it as follows. When people die prematurely, suddenly, often because of violence, the spirit is not at ease. The spirit is not in peace or sattvic. So the body, the physical body dies, but normally the spirit rises from the body. The ascendance, as it is called in religious scriptures. But the restless spirit, the disturbed spirit, fails to ascend from the dead physical body and stays behind. So that is why we know stories of haunted places, a haunted house, or a haunted forest, or a haunted mountain, where people who are susceptible to it feel restless spirits. They feel the disturbance that is hanging around there. That is the Vijnana Prana. Vijnana Prana is the vibration that that all the generations perceived as ghost. You also know from ghost stories that when there is a haunted place, you call an exorcist to help get rid of the ghost. Then the exorcist comes, of course, with a suitcase full of tools, with a cross and maybe a hammer with a silver nail and what have you, and will do all kinds of mysterious rituals. But what a real exorcist actually does is connect with the restless spirit, make it comfortable, comfort the restless spirit, make it sattvic, so that finally that restless spirit feels allowed to go up. The rituals is just to show that the person is actually doing something. But a real exorcist does the work in silence. You do it in meditation, you do it without the presence of other people. So the hocus pocus with all the gadgets and the rituals, that is just to confirm to the people that hired you to chase the ghost away that you're doing something specialized. But the real work is done in silence and connecting with the spirit, making it sattvic so that it feels allowed to ascend, to rise up, to finally find peace. In a practical sense, this energy is of use when you're being threatened by people, when you're being attacked by people, by thugs, by violent people. The way to protect yourself is to make as much noise as possible, to scream loudly. To understand how that works, you have to look at the principle of a burglar alarm. Burglars don't want to be seen when they do their work, so they usually do it at night, in the dark, and possibly in total silence. A burglar alarm is triggered when a person who is not authorized to be there, who has bad intentions, breaches a certain boundary, triggering an alarm that what does it do? It makes a huge sound. A siren goes off, blaring, which causes disorientation. It disorientates the burglar, who in his panic will run away as fast as they can. When you're being attacked by a bad person in the street or in the elevator, or you scream as loud as you can, the chance that that person will run away is very high, because it works the same like the burglary alarm. What I'm trying to say is that sometimes people think it's better to be quiet and cooperate, then you will not be harmed. But that is when the harm actually really takes place. My sister was once in the night attacked by a rapist who followed her into the front door of the apartment, and she thought that he lived there because it was not her apartment, but her sister, her twin sister, lives there. So she let him in. Then once he was in, he wanted her to go into the next door where the storages are. And then she said, "Hey, are you sure that you are supposed to be here?" And then he started to attack her and she started screaming, which then led to my sister coming down from the third floor and neighbors also reacting in the middle of the night. So he ran away. He punched her in the process, but he ran away. But he could not do the other things that he intended to do. He would otherwise have raped her. So noise completely disturbs the throat chakra. There are many other examples. The American Army has a strategy to disturb people who are holed up in a building and with weapons and are not coming out, and the army in front, outside, they want to get them out. American Army plays AC/DC. They play hard rock very loud, and it drives people crazy. They use that also as torture in prisons, loud music, but also the opposite is possible. Maybe you know of in the 70s and 80s, Europe had a problem with Marxist terrorism, homegrown terrorism. Germany had its Rote Armee faction, Red Army. Italy had its Red Army. Spain had its Red Army. They were all Marxist ideology based terrorists, but they killed politicians. They kidnapped politicians for ransom, but they also killed politicians with who they didn't agree. They kidnapped rich captains of industry, the presidents and directors of the biggest companies, for a ransom. And if the ransom wouldn't come quick enough, they would kill them. They robbed a lot of banks in very military style fashion. So those people, in the end, of course, they were caught. And because their crimes were so heinous, the authorities wanted to really punish them. But in Europe, there is no death penalty anymore. Torture is not allowed. So what did they do? They put them in isolated cells, total isolation, 24 hours a day, with the purpose to torture them through total silence. So noise creates chaos in the throat chakra, mental problems, but total silence, total isolation also leads to serious damage, psychological, emotional damage in the person undergoing the silence. As a yogi, understanding nada, you'd probably immerse yourself in the sound of nada, but people who don't know about that, they'll be very badly affected by that. It is the reason why people very often, while they are doing certain activities, they feel the need to put on the TV or the radio, but they always have to have some sound surrounding them. It is kind of a need that comes from the throat chakra. Nature is stimulating sattva in the throat chakra. This is the reason why, especially people living in a city, whenever they can, they will go to the countryside, they will go to the coast, to the beach, to the forest, or to the mountain. Subconsciously, basically establishing sattva in the throat chakra, surrounding yourself with nature, natural environment, natural sounds also, New Age music, or Indian music genre called raga, which is, we will talk about later on in the last section of the course, but raga is the music that tries to emulate the peaceful atmosphere of nature in the forest, at the lake, etc., when it rains, to harmonize the chakra. The developmental stage of the chakra is between the age of 29 and 35. It is the age where you settle down and start focusing on your career and your future. The previous chakra I forgot to mention has a developmental stage between the age of 22 and 28. That is the stage of your big love. We talked about love. It's also the stage of idealism. It is the stage where you see students, often students, standing up for what is wrong in society. Idealism. We saw in the chakra before that, Manipura chakra, teenagers, adolescents, expressing a form of violence. In that age, between 15 and 21, when we protest, we often end up damaging things, looting, etc. You can see it on TV. The next bracket, between 22 and 28, the protests are more peaceful, often without damaging things or without hurting anybody, but standing up for ideals. After that, the stage is more self-centered, based on establishing oneself. You can see people, if you don't recognize it in yourself, you can see it in society. Many of the politicians that in the Netherlands, you see very clearly, the politicians that are now in the seat of government are the ones that protested loudest against the government before, when they were in their student time, in the age between 22 and 28, those people were protesting loudest, the intellectuals were protesting loudest. Now they are sitting exactly on those seats against which they protested, and they make the same mistakes that the ones they protested against. It's very ironic, or maybe you could even say cynical. But according to what we learn here, it is a very natural development. Questions? Okay, let's have a break then. Short break.